stockpiling since 1982. Since that time, he had bought 50 guns legally, none of which set off any red flags. So how do you say the guy became obsessed with guns leading up to the shooting when the guy was collecting guns since 1982? Doesn't make sense.
Yeah, there's so many people like that. I mean, it's like I know people, they've got like built in, like almost like a walk-in gun safe. They've got them all displayed. They've got them all right there. I mean, people, when you hear mainstream media, the way that they place it is they picture some like Mel Gibson type thing where you got newspapers stacked to the ceiling, you got things, and there's just guns piled everywhere. No, a lot of these people, it's like you said, the guy with the fountain pens. A lot of these ones, they have these limited edition. It's like it's a limited edition Desert Eagle, or Ruger. I mean, they've got these things where these are their babies. They have them all nice there. They keep them all cleaned. They take them out and shoot. Some of them you don't even shoot because it loses the value. Yeah. And so, that's why I said, so when you hear people throw this thing out, like you'll hear the news throw out, he had 100 guns and he had all this stuff. No, that's pretty, for some of these collectors, that's a normal amount. I mean, some of people would be like, that's all you have? Yeah. I mean, it's like you go to the gun shows and people would be like, wow, rookie, when are you going to start collecting?
So there you go. And I'm getting an education there, because 50 guns and then another 40 guns. And I'm thinking, you really only have two hands. But so he had a lot of money, and it was something that he liked to do. So he was anti-government. This kind of ties into the whole projection that we had now. So a couple of days before the shooting, a woman sat near him in a diner with her son. And she reported that she overheard him discussing Waco and Ruby Ridge with a companion. Who is this companion? I would like to know, because there are some names that have come up of some people that he associated with, but we don't know. They said things like courtroom flags with golden fringes are not real flags. They're foreign jurisdiction admiralty flags. And this is something that's believed by sovereign citizens. Yep. So nowhere has it ever said that he was a devoted member of the sovereign citizens. This guy did not seem to be a joiner, Craig. And that's part of the confoundingness of the case.
Yeah, that's where, like, it's one of the things, like, tell me if I'm jumping ahead, but this is one of the ones where, like, the Islamic State claimed that he was working for them.
Yeah, well, that's one of the things we're going to unpack.
And that's one of those things too. It's where it's just like he was clearly somebody that was not a follower. He was not somebody that would just joined in. He would join a group to do something. So when people are making claim, to me it was almost like when the serial killer, they put it out there and the police have to wade through the hundreds of calls saying, I'm the Zodiac killer, because people are wanting to claim because it's just people are sick that way.
Right. Yeah. And we'll revisit that as we unpack on the back end. There was another unidentified man, which is problematic, but he reported that Stephen Paddock asked him to create an auto sear, which is a device to convert semi-auto weapons to full auto. He said that they met in the parking lot of a Bass Pro Shop where the man was selling schematics for the auto sear device. But the man said, no, I will not build it for you. I can only give you the schematic. But the man's identified, Craig. It supposedly took place in a Bass Pro Shop. We got to put that in. That ain't hard data. Hard data. Supposedly, again, this is, things that people overheard, that he ranted about FEMA camps. We've all talked about FEMA camps, anybody who does this kind of thing, and how the response to Hurricane Katrina was a dry run for law enforcement and military to start kicking down doors and confiscating guns. So there you go. Gun collector worried about guns getting confiscated. Also, he's not alone. This is a high percentage of people. So he buys $95,000 worth of firearms or firearm-related purchases in Nevada, Texas, Utah, and California. He buys nearly 40 guns between 2016 and 2017. Many of these were high-powered. Many of these were military grade. His girlfriend, Danley, she noticed that she would accompany him to the gun shows. She noticed he was buying large amounts of ammo, and she asked him about it. She said, Stephen, what's going on with all this ammo? And he said, it's cheaper to buy it in bulk. He helped him set up a gun range. None of these things. This is just background info, folks. This is stuff you're gonna, when you do your own research, these are things you're gonna see, but it's part of the narrative. 2 weeks before the shooting, he sends Danley to the Philippines, and shortly thereafter, he wires her $150,000 to buy a house. So, Craig, it seems clear he knew he wasn't coming back.
Yeah, this is kind of when, it's like, kind of foreshadowing like what I told you before we did the thing. That's where I was like, I'm not myself, for everybody out there listening, I'm not entirely sold on the fact that he was alone.
Right.
Joey did that in the description. It was kind of like after, that was one thing, because some of the stuff he's doing, it makes it seem like he's worried that something is going to happen, which is not typically an MO of somebody who is, because when you watch some of like these mass shooters, they don't do a fire sale, like get rid of a bunch of stuff before they do it. They just snap and they do the action. He's acting like he's like, I want to make sure you're taken care of, which is almost like he's foreboding, like he has this in his mind. I may not survive this. And so that's one of the things as we're going through this. It's like, that's one of the things I feel like he was brought in almost like like in a way, like in some sort of like consultant type role, like brought in like almost like in a way, like a patsy, like he's going to be the fall guy.
Yeah, we'll definitely take the time to unpack. Craig, I want to ask you, there's a comment here that I put on screen. This man had prior charges. I am unaware of that.
Yeah, that King, I've never found anything that he had prior charges, because that's one of the things too. It's, I keep bringing it up mainstream. A lot of stuff. So it's like routinely, it's like if you have something on your record, you're going to get flagged and you're not going to be able to purchase a weapon. Yeah. And all of his weapons that I've been able to find were purchased legally. And so these gunshot, and so those things, background checks. King also put a thing there that he spent $95,000 in weapons. That's a lot for like one purchase, but it's also not unheard of if like you're a collector, like you're buying, because there's some weapons. I mean, you could easily drop $10,000 on one of those one of those collector's items once. So the dollar amount's not, but if he had 0 weapons and then all of a sudden in like a month's time, he bought over 100 of them, all this ammo, that would be, for most, especially if that would be a red flag. They would be like, they would look into it further. But by everything I could find, everything he purchased was up and up, passed all background checks. He passed all this stuff. It was all legal purchases.
That was the ATF, and never set off any red flag. A lot of the weapons he bought in 2016, 2017 were at gun shows in 4 states. His girlfriend was with him, and he had the money. He spent the money. So, okay. So it seems that he very meticulously planned this attack. That becomes important when we're looking at his mental health, when we're looking at his medications and other things like that. He did recon on site 1 month prior. He set up surveillance cameras outside his room, started stockpiling weapons and ammo. I'll take you through the timeline, the detailed timeline, because it's important. But he also considered Boston and Chicago. As a matter of fact, he booked a room across from Lollapalooza, which just happened a couple weeks ago, in August. The hotel disputes that he stayed there. So this is a very confounding case, Craig. Like, people can't agree. The Chicago goes, no, he was never here, but there is evidence that he was there. He also rented 3 condos in the Ogden in Vegas between September 17th to 28th with views of the Life is Beautiful music festival. So he was scoping different areas looking for the right thing, which we will never know why he chose the one that he chose, except maybe it was chosen for him. Maybe he got on the radar while he was doing recon, Craig, and that's how he became a patsy. That's how come he was pulled in, because his dad has this weird history that we're going to get to. So let's go through the timeline here. On the 25th of September, he comps He books a comp suite on the 32nd floor of the Mandalay Bay. Now, the guy's a high roller. You get comps, you get suites. When you're dropping the kind of money that he's dropping, you get all these kinds of things. No red flags there. Then he books an adjacent suite on the 29th of September. We don't know if that one was comped. We don't know. It's just that nobody's saying. From the 29th to when the shooting happens on the 1st, 22 suitcases are carted in with help from bellhops using the service elevator. But again, Craig, this guy is a super high roller. He has 2 suites. And I guess they're just not asking him, Mr. Paddock, what's in your suitcases? Because you just don't bother high rollers. So what I'm guessing.
Yeah. Most of the time, like, I don't know if I ever told anybody. Like I said, I used to work at a casino. Yeah, it was an Indian gaming casino. Yeah, and I was part of the. I started out as the count room, and then I became a player's rep, and so I did like a lot of the comps and stuff like that. And so that's one of the things like you would do is like you'd take care of the high rollers that come in. It's like it's so one of those things. It was basically that type of thing. It's like they kind of had a little bit. They had more leeway than the normal people did because the casino know they're bringing in money, even though they're winning. They're still bringing in a lot of money because it's one of those. It's almost like a magnet. It draws when the excitement. It's like it builds a buzz, and then people will start throwing. So as you see, like a table that's going crazy, like people are winning, the other tables start to fill up because people want to be part of that activity.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what some of these high roll, because people are like, why would they cater to somebody who's winning all this money off them? Well, it's because it's also bringing in, it's bringing in more business, shall we say?
Right.
So yeah, so it wouldn't really be. We'll get to the unpacking part. The room itself is not the thing for me. It's what he does in the room that, coming from a casino, there's no way somebody on their own could pull off what he did without somebody noticing it.
Yeah.
There's no way. It's absolutely no way.
So let's talk about what he did. They have actually broken down, I guess, through the cameras and through all different kinds of things. September 25th, he brings in 5 pieces. The 22nd, 7th, 28th, 2, 30th, 6. That's when he puts the do not disturb signs on the September 6th. October 26th, the 30th rather. He brought in 6 suitcases on the 30th, put up the do not disturb signs. He brought in 2 more suitcases on October 1st, the day of. There were 23 firearms in the hotel room total, many fitted with bump stocks to simulate auto fire. So a bump stock, you take off the regular stock, you put on the bump stock, it moves. And when you depress the trigger, that moves. And so you're not.
It's like a little spring. Yeah, it's just like a little spring action. So as the recoil from the weapon hits, it gives that same thing. Yeah.
So here's the deal on bump stocks. They were banned in 2018 under Trump. That was overturned by the Supreme Court in June of 2024, ironically. So just several months ago. He jams all the doors. He's got gas masks with him. Okay, this is the night of the shooting, October 1st. At 9:59, Jesus Campos, hotel security, he shoots him while Campos is investigating an open door alarm on the 32nd floor down the hall from Paddock's rooms. That, Craig, just strikes me. An open door alarm. If Paddock is ready to do his thing at any minute, why did he open a door? Maybe someone else was coming in. Okay, I'll just put that out there. 10:05, Paddock opens fire. Metro PD reports shots fired. PD are not on the scene, but adjacent to Mandalay Bay. 10:12, 7 minutes later, first 2 Metro PD officers arrive on the 31st floor and report gunfire above them. This is already 7 minutes later. 10:15, he stops firing. Why? He still has plenty of ammo in the room, and then he kills himself, is the story. Why? Why did he stop then all of a sudden and turn a gun on himself? Again, official narrative. 2 minutes later, 10:17, Metro police officers arrive on the 32nd floor, and Campos directs them to the shooter's direction. So Campos has already been shot in the leg 8 minutes earlier, and he's just waiting there to help the cops. from 10:26 to 10:30. 8 more Metro police. These are all police officers. Where's hotel security and some other stuff that involves MGM that we're going to get to? But questions to keep in mind, folks. They clear the rooms on the 32nd floor and they check for injured people on the 32nd floor. It is until, Craig, I have in my notes here, almost an hour later, 11:20 to 11:27, police actually enter Paddock's suite and they find him dead. They breached a connecting door to the second suite. They find it empty except for additional weapons. Do you have confirmation on that? Did you have the pipe? It seems impossible that it was 50 minutes later.
Well, that's part of the one was one of the biggest things where it's because there was always, when the initial reports coming out, they were like, they didn't know where the shooting was coming from. It was just like what happened at the rally where Trump was shot.
Mhm.
There's people going there. They're pointing where it's coming from. The police know where it's coming from and they don't do anything. And that was one of the controversies, is that was there a stand down order where they told not to enter? And that this comes into the mystery, because there's never been, that I can find, if anybody can find this stuff for me, I would love to see it. I've never seen a surveillance photo of the weapon of him bringing in all this weaponry. This is not something you just stick in a little duffel bag and you bring in, with your overnight bag. I mean, this would take probably what he had there. You would need at least 2 or 3 of those rolling hotel carts full and wheeling it into your room. And as we talk about this stuff, security, hotels are not letting you install things on the outside of your door.
Yeah.
They're all this stuff. You're in a high roll, you're up in this place. If anybody's been in a hotel, imagine, people get annoyed if somebody's banging around or has a TV too loud. Imagine what the phone calls are going to come out when you're hearing it ring, 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 ring. You're hearing somebody drilling and installing stuff on a door. That's not something that's going to happen, which this is one of the things, like through the research, this was the common, like the conspiracy theory that was thrown out there, is that somebody in surveillance was either on the take, was involved with somebody for, and this is the infamous thing that we, a lot of, it's frustrating, but that they were involved. And this is that shadow, what group or whatever that was. This is where that play comes in, that somebody else might have been involved, because there's no way, especially like with the police, because we'll get back to that thing with 50. How can you have an active person? I mean, you're up there and you're hearing pop, 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 shots, and nobody is going to the room. Everybody's like, what do we do? Where are we at? I don't know where to go. The reports are the police don't have any clue. They're like, it's right there. You can see the broken window and you can see the muzzle flashes. You know where it's at.
That's right. It's a broken window and muzzle flashes. That's right. So do you send a helicopter with a sniper? Like, how do you deal with this? 10 minutes is ridiculous. I have never been in a situation where someone is firing automatic weapons. Over 1,000 rounds of ammunition he spent in those 9-10 minutes. That time must go by so slow and be so surreal, and it must seem like it's never going to end.
Well, because if the report's right that he had high capacity mags that were 100 round ones, 1,000 rounds won't take that long if they're already loaded up in a mag.
Yeah,
it's going to be, that's going to shoot pretty quick depending on the firing rate of the weapon that was used. But it's the fact that the reports are, he's either a horrible shot or there was something else going on, because if you're firing that many rounds into a crowd of 22,000 people, it's a miracle that as few people got hit as they did.
Right. Yeah. Woo, just so you know, we started the show with the shooting incident yesterday and covered these things, so you can go back and take a look at that. But it's tragic because the police had talked to him. So, okay. So Craig, let's talk aftermath, and this is just going to get more and more bizarre. So they find 50 pounds of explosives and 1,600 rounds of ammo in his car. They find explosives and another 19 firearms in his Mesquite home, which is about 70 miles north of Las Vegas. Now, interesting about the explosives in his car, That and
Well,
why leave them there? 50 pounds of
well,
explosives.
the only thing I found, like you said, is tell me if you found something else too. The things I was talking about is that it was tannerite,
Okay.
which for a lot of people, that's a common thing that a lot of people take out to the shooting ranges. Like a lot of times people put it in a microwave, or they'll put it in small appliances, because when you shoot, it just makes a massive explosion. And so it's not really something that would be used like your typical, like, Oklahoma City bombing. That's not something that
Right.
would be used, because you would actually have to. It would make more sense if he was planning on putting it out at the fuel tanks over by the airport, like if he had staged that type of stuff with that, because then it would create an explosion. But just having it in his car could be, he just bought it. He could just, it's one of that's, I don't know, because it doesn't make any sense. I mean, that is a lot though. 50 pounds. That's a lot.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, you were talking about putting it in a microwave or something. How much would you use at a time?
Not very much. I mean, it doesn't take much to make it. Yeah,
weird.
A 50 pounds. I mean, that's gonna look like a little. That's gonna be just a small mushroom cloud. I mean, that's gonna be a pretty big explosion.
I just got word that some comments are being censored. I apologize for that, folks. We don't have control over that. I will say, a couple weeks ago, and this happens every so often, Craig, one of the friends of our show it was weird that they didn't comment the whole show. There were comments throughout the show that never came up for us. So
that's weird.
Folks. That's just beyond our control. I apologize.
Yeah, we'll tannerite, like I said, it's considered a binary. It's kind of a binary explosive, so it's not one of those like unstable ones. I mean, that's something like like if you had it right now, I could have it in this can, shaking it around. It's not going to explode.
Right on.
Yeah, so it has to take an ignition.
So they have that, the 19 firearms in the Mesquite home, 5 handguns, 2 shotguns, lots of ammo at his Reno property, 50 pounds. Right. We talked about that. So here comes the big thing. And this is where we're going to spend the rest of the show really talking about. And Craig has hinted at it, rightfully so. And I came at the top of the show. Why did he do it? To this day, 7 years later, nobody has a theory. The best that they can do is that the comps were getting cut back and he was pissed off at casinos. I don't buy that at all. That's the best they can do. That's the best they can do. So what happens in the aftermath? U.S. prosecutors charge an Arizona man named Douglas Haig of selling him illegal armor-piercing bullets. Haig pleaded not guilty and maintains that he sold tracer ammunition, which illuminates a bullet's path. So we have all these spurious things about who we talked to, the auto smears, all this kind of stuff. October 2nd, 2017, law enforcement breach the hotel room. So it's the next morning, and find him dead from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Okay, so sorry that was in there. That was an artifact in my notes. Now, what did the officers find in the room?
That's the thing, though. They breached the room the next morning.
Yeah.
If the guy's like this thing, it's like, why wasn't that breached immediately?
But that's not right. According to this timeline, 11:20 to 11:27. So that's still that day. So the more articles you look at, Craig, the more websites, the more interviews, the more data, newspaper articles, depending on the newspaper, there's so much confliction. I spent hours and hours and hours on this, and Joe spent hours and hours on it. So officers find several laptops. Here you go, folks. Sinister mystery. At least one of the laptops had a missing hard drive. He didn't leave the damn room. Yeah. So did he flush it down the toilet? That's a little weird. His brother Eric said that Stephen helped his family cheat on their taxes. Keep in mind that he was an accountant. Hearing about the missing hard drive, Stephen said several times during an interview, maybe he did care for us. So that feels like a cover, Craig.
Yeah.
Why the hell?
It does.
Your brother's dead, but you're all still alive, and you go, oh, by the way, not only is my brother a monster in the public eye, but we all cheated on our taxes for years.
Yeah,
that's a strange ass thing to say. Strange ass thing to say.
I don't know. Is the missing hard drive? This is this is the, how many times did people, I know the autopsy said like he shot himself in the mouth, like that was the autopsy report, but it's one of those, it feels like who's hasn't watched a movie where the CIA has that device, where it forces your hand, to basically look like you've done it. I go, the missing hard drive, I'll bring a picture so I could, I think there's one other room. It just, the way things are laid out, if this is how he had it, this was not planned. This wasn't a planned thing, because it's like anybody that would be like, if you've ever seen, have you ever been to a shooting range?
Yes.
Okay. Like I said, if not, I'm getting up there and we're taking you. It's fun. Yeah. So it's just, if you have it lined out, like if you plan, if you plan on doing it, don't say. The more you say, the more chances you're going to have to take your favorite things out to the lake for a swim. It's this. If you're planning something, you would have it staged. You would have stuff there to where, it's just anybody that's seen like SWAT, they have everything at the ready to where it's quick, fluid motions. If this is planned, everything would be staged to where he could just quick, and just constantly feed and going. But if you look at this, it was literally, it screams staged, because things are facing different directions. There's random things that don't work together. Why would you have this caliber weapon next to this caliber? Because they're different weapons. There's nothing connecting these things. So this was literally like, hey, that one looks scary enough. Let's just pile it in here and we'll see. Right. And that's what this photo. And so while you're talking this thing, I'll find that picture so people can see it, because it's like,
and that was one of those things in 2017 that people were talking about. If you look at the room, it makes no sense as to what went on there. That's much harder to find now, Craig. Those pictures are still there, but they're much harder to find. It's been partially scrubbed. So child porn is found on the computer in his suite. Old chestnut. His brother Bruce is busted for child pornography, supposedly in possession of 600 images on October 25th. So about 3.5 weeks later. Evidence is found inside a business in California. Here's the thing. His brother was homeless. His brother was squatting. So in this random business near where he was squatting, he stored his 600 photos of children. It's weird.
Yeah.
So now the family is tax evaders. Now the family is child porn addicts. Now let's talk about dad, where this goes to. This is astonishing to me, Craig. I spent, I don't want to say way too much time, but I spent a lot of time on their dad because it just didn't make sense to me. Father's name was Benjamin Hoskins Paddock. This dude is a career criminal, knocked off some banks, into all other kind of financial crimes. He was on the FBI most wanted list from 1969 to 1977. According to my research, this is exceedingly rare. Most people are on that list for a matter of weeks, maybe a couple of months. The whole point of putting them on the most wanted list is they're going to be caught. So this guy tried to run over an FBI agent in 1960. He goes to jail. He escapes. He's paroled. He goes back to jail. He escapes. He's on the run for a decade. Then they finally get him and they charge him a fine. And he ends his life, Craig, living with his girlfriend, I think in Texas, running a car shop. A guy who tried to run over an FBI agent, who escaped from prison twice. He didn't fill out any of his sentences. He served 8 years of 20 years. But he was on the top 10 most wanted list for almost a decade. It feels to me like this guy was somehow involved. Yeah. Now, some things online say that he maybe had CIA connections or things like that. I was able to find nothing to substantiate that whatsoever.
Yeah. That's the thing, is there's no. It's hard to find like his personal connections, like who he's tied to. I mean, it's almost like he was scrubbed in a way, because there some of the stuff, like you try to dig into it and just like you can't find some of these pieces that seem, for somebody that just did this, you'd think we'd know almost everything about his life, everything in these things. And it's like you can't find these things. There's just people are talking it's usually it's all the articles are the same thing. He got
Yeah.
crazy about losing money at the casino. He got mad at the casinos. He was like that, and that's all the stuff you find. You don't find a lot of the stuff about the guy. I mean,
No.
there's stuff. I mean, he was a pilot. I mean, he had 2 planes. I mean, it's just like he wasn't it wasn't like he was some like half-wit that didn't have like a mental capacity to handle these things. He was, for all indications, it's like there's not a reason for him to have snapped like this and target some, and that's one of the things, that's one of the conspiracy theories too. I don't know if you ran into that one, where there's people that claim that he was spun, like the MK Ultra type thing. Like he was one of those that was ramped up. Like he just all of a sudden, because they're like, it doesn't make any sense why I'm like, I can't find any connection where he would have been involved in come close to like one of these projects.
Right. No,
or a connection to one of these projects.
Right. Pretty soon we're going to get to the Higgins Johnson report, where a lot of this stuff comes from, because that's an interesting case in and of itself. So anyway, it was exceedingly weird to me about his dad. So guys, look him up. Here's an interesting thing. Craig, you were talking about this as a competent guy. So from 1985 to 1988, he worked for a predecessor company to Lockheed Martin. I found that several places, including the New York Times. So he was at Lockheed Martin. That's interesting, right? That's all I can say about that.
Yeah.
Lockheed Martin confirmed to the New York Times that he worked for the predecessor company, but they would not name the company he worked for.
Which means he was probably in some secret project, one of those things. But I mean, it could have been a lot of things. He could have just been somebody that's working on the tires. Tested. I mean, like I said, we don't know. And that's the thing, is that they won't give you that. I put the picture, one of the pictures up there from the hotel room.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, right. So let's do that before we get into
and this, for people that look at here, this is one like this bathtub, like hot tub, bathtub type thing. He's got guns just piled on top of each other. Those are not, I've heard some people say, well, you want to have redundant ones in case the barrel gets hot and stuff like this. Yes, but they're not laid out in a convenient way, because it's like if your object, like I said, I don't want to make it seem like I'm making light of this thing. If your object is to kill as many people as possible from this hotel room, you want to put as many bullets downrange as you possibly can. So what is the purpose of having guns on the other side of the room from the window? That you've got to drop one, you got to run over, get it, you got to come back. By that time, people are scrambling. And then you see the ones that are on the bed. That is designed for. That's not for rapid fire. That tripod thing. So you would be selecting targets with those weapons. So like the way it's laid out, it's not laid out like somebody is preparing to kill as many people as he possibly can. This is one where it just looks like if we put these things out, he's going to look like he's a mastermind. And it's almost like we found the scary weapons of the thing. And this is 2016. This is right after the Obama years. They've really been harping on the AR style weaponry. And it's just what's here, these scary looking machine, as they say, the military style weaponry. Well, that's the thing. I don't know. I based on the picture, I don't know. It's not laid out like somebody that planned this.
Right. And my understanding was the bullet patterns, the people right after people were saying a lot more, because I had all these notes that I had in a folder for a really long time. So it just gets weirder and weirder. This is one thing that people were talking about in 2017, and you can't find it online anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody's talking about it. The man was not a Mason. They were saying a Mason because they're talking about the 32nd floor, which is almost the 33rd floor, whatever. Okay, maybe yes, maybe no, doing a lot of numerology and all of that. I will say, in almost a perfect triangle is Mandalay Bay, the grounds where the festival was, and the third corner of the triangle is the Luxor Hotel with the giant Sphinx. So ritualistic, all that kind of stuff. I do subscribe, Craig, and I talked about this when we did the Kennedy assassinations, to the killing of the king, which was at the 33rd parallel. In my fiction, I pull in a lot of the Egyptian roots of the, you know, those kind of Masonic rites and all of those kinds of things. And folks, keep in mind before you jump on, because people write these articles and they go, oh, the Masons are a service society, they're networking and all that. There's the Masons and then there's the Masons. There's NASA and then there's NASA. You follow what I'm saying? They're front and then there's back, and you can call it whatever you want. Yeah, Joe, Scottish Rite goes 33 degrees, and a lot of that was, you know, that kind of thing. So
Is that for what you're talking about?
What's that, sir? Oh,
right
yeah,
here. I got it. Yep.
Yeah, there you go. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, that's a really good one. So there you go. Mandalay. So there you go. I'll just leave that up there. A week after the shooting, the man's home was burgled, but the perpetrators were never identified. So I'm guessing they went in looking for, make sure they had cleaned up, covered their tracks, and all of that kind of stuff. That was one of his homes because he had several. The Las Vegas sheriff originally said there was no way he did it on its own, but he backed off. The FBI had investigators working on the case under a gag order, threatened with polygraph tests if anything was leaked. That seems to me like a little above and beyond situation. So here are some of the theories, Craig, that we'll look at, we'll unpack. Was this a false flag for gun control? A handful of senior intelligence committee people from the CIA, the NSC, Delta Force, SEAL guy, they say yes. Oh, and SEAL Team 6, right, which is counterterrorism, the kind of most famous SEAL team. They said that it was an anti-Trump conspiracy, and this was led by Alex Jones. Alex Jones said this was all about, you know, and Alex Jones could be dangerous. So just laying this out here. There was something called the Higgins-Johnson report. This is a 51-screen PowerPoint presentation that these two guys put together. Higgins worked for the Combating Terrorism Technical Support Office from 2002 to 2010 and didn't leave the DOD until 2013. So this is a guy that was 11 years in counter television, ops, all this kind of stuff. Pretty serious guy, but very right-wing Christian. So fairness, put that out there. Johnson spent 25 years in the CIA. He was a senior ops officer and chief of station at various overseas assignments. So these aren't a couple of, you know, this is a pretty serious career, guys, Craig. I know we always say that, but when you're officer level, when your career in the intelligence community, kind of like a David Grush, coming forward and talking about this kind of stuff does not benefit you in any kind of way. It doesn't benefit you in any kind of way. Of course, the multiple shooter theory, gunfire from different locations, inconsistencies in the sound of the shots, indicating that they were using different weapons, could have been sounds echoing off of buildings. I have watched sort of wave graphs of the bullet patterns, and here's what a fully automatic sounds like. Here's what a semi-auto with a bump stock sounds like. Here's what a true semi-auto sounds like. Here's what different kinds of things sound like. This really reminds me of what went on with the Trump assassination, right? We watched videos and I talked to experts, and a colleague of ours came in with different ideas, and it's really hard with sounds echoing off of buildings to discern what is what.
Yeah, that's one of the things too. Like for me, it's like, because when you're hearing it, because it could really, especially the caliber of the weapon, it could easily echo off of buildings, and so you know could make it sound like it. I know, just like the way that they're talking about, you know, some of the shots, and we don't have time to really break into, you know, this isn't a 3-hour show. You know, some of the shots, they would be really hard for him to make from that room, from the angle he was in. And so is it possible that you could do it? Yes. But some of them he would have to almost lean out the window to pull off some of these shots. So there's talk like there might have been somebody up on a roof. There could have been, you know, those things. One, before we get too far away from it, one of the things too, like one of the things, big thing about Vegas too, this is a multi-billion-dollar industry. So the last thing they want to do is kill business. So that's part of the reason why there was so much secrecy from the casino side, is that they want, they weren't going to give out holes in their security. They weren't going to do this stuff. So that was part of the lockdown, why some of this stuff. So that, but that doesn't explain why we haven't seen footage from outside or from anything. That's the thing. It's just, we don't see anything. We don't see anything from valet as he's pulling up and pulling the stuff in. We don't see any of this stuff. So that's one of the things where they think it came through the back door, through the receiving.
Yeah.
And which would mean surveillance would have to be involved, which puts the casino in legal liability. And so they have to really shut down, because anybody that died from this thing would have an instant lawsuit against, this multi-billion-dollar company. And so
we're going to get to that, because it is the most sinister damn thing of all, and some of it doesn't make sense. So, Craig, you had you had mentioned that ISIS claimed responsibility. ISIS makes false claims all the time. They claim that Paddock converted to Islam months before. There's no evidence of this whatsoever. No evidence of any kind of religiosity. Some of the more outlandish things say that there were Antifa pamphlets in the room. Also, what we're really learning, having done this 45 shows plus both of us being interested in this kind of thing prior, they interject really crazy shit, like gunfire from helicopters, supposedly based on videos, eyewitness accounts. So they interdict that into the narrative. Oh yeah, you're going to say there's multiple shooters. You're going to say the angles don't match up. You're going to say he had to hang out the window. Well, we're going to say that it was coming from helicopters.
Yeah, black helicopter
were firing down on the crowd.
Yeah, the black helicopter that has a silent propeller. Yep.
Yeah, that's how you do that. It's X-Files. Chris Carter was so smart, and I always talk about that. He really should send me a Christmas card. I always talk about how. So let's talk about some of these players, Craig. There's 3 players here. One is this guy, Brian Hodge. This is very interesting. Brian Hodge was an Australian native living in LA since 2013, and he was at Mandalay Bay that night. He was not only at Mandalay Bay that night, but he was on the same floor. Was he the guy who pulled the trigger on Paddock because he had served his purpose? He winds up 32 floors down, hiding in the bushes, broadcasting live from his cell phone, and he's saying that there are multiple shooters. He's saying he's hearing different kinds of weapons being fired, all that kind of stuff there, and making all kinds of other misstatements. He had said that he was in his room. He said that his room was next to Stephen Paddock's. It actually wasn't. So this guy got caught up in a total mess where suddenly people are going, oh, this guy has odd connections. This Australian happens to be, on the floor with Paddock, all this kind of thing. Yeah, then he was suppressing all his social media, but it could have been because he got attention. So that's one guy, Brian Hodge. You got anything to say about Hodge, brother?
No, just pretty much the same thing where it just, he like, I hate to sound like the conspiracy theorist like others, like, but he almost sounds like the plant, because it's too convenient that he happens to be there. He happens to be listening. I've got, he's doing like the Alex Jones, like, I can hear multiple shooters right now that are shooting right here. And you're doing all this. It's like, really? I go, it's almost, but then like I said, he keeps getting caught in these, as what they call it now. I misspoke. I've been misspeaking this whole time. Yeah, it's like it's not I'm lying. It's I'm sorry, I misspoke. No, you lied. Right. Come on, dude. You said you're right next to him. It's like, come on. I'm like, who hasn't made the mistake of when we book in the hotel, I was next to the presidential suite. I was right there. It's like, you were on the 3rd floor. Oh yeah, I'm sorry, I misspoke.
Yeah, this guy totally didn't realize. Craig, this has been so heavy and on. I don't mean to make light, but we're almost an hour in. It's been a really long, challenging week. Do you remember during O.J. Simpson, the whole thing before he's arrested, after the chase and all of that kind of thing with the white Bronco and all? Howard Stern was absolutely at the height of his powers, right? He was running for governor, and he was just doing books and movies and everything. And this person calls up, I don't know, it's like Peter Jennings or somebody really serious. And he's like, I'm outside of OJ's house and he looks scared. Baba Booey, Baba Booey. And he totally got fished in. And like, we have a guy on the line and he's talking about this Baba Booey. Do you remember that?
Yep.
That was crazy.
Yeah, it does. It really does. I mean, it seems like it's one of those, either he was taking advantage of the situation, like this is my chance for fame. Like he was like the early day, like he was a precursor to what we see now with social media.
Right.
Right. It's I don't know. It's because there's even I was trying to find the article. I looked in it because there was a lady that claims that she was the room below and she heard commotion up, like Stephen was talking with somebody.
Yeah. Right.
But once again, like what we do in a courtroom, it's it's like, the first time you bring that up, the attorney's going to be objection, speculate, it's just because there's no way to prove this. Because I mean, I could say, I could make the claim, I was in the hotel too, and man, I heard Stephen, it sounded like he got slammed up against a wall. Well, there's no way to prove that. It's just and that's what it seems like. These reports from Hodge and from this lady seem like somebody who's just kind of trying to get their moment in the sun.
Yeah. And maybe the lady at the diner after the fact saying, he was talking about Waco and Ruby Ridge and he was with this other guy again. Who was the guy? We don't know. Who was the unidentified guy that was selling auto-sear diagrams in the Bass Pro parking lot? We just sort of know.
Yeah, I mean, because you could, he's part of the gun show thing. That was part of the thing where some of that literature was being sold through this. So is there a chance that he could have been brought into the same thing like Terry Nichols, McVeigh, that he kind of felt it's like, what, these government people are doing this thing, and that's how he got brought into this. Maybe that's how they brought him in here. It's like, hey, you want to get back at okay, meet us here at this hotel room. I said there's all these possibilities, but the problem is we don't know because we've never seen footage of any of this.
And I've been meaning to say, brother, that they had to know because we have a list of these suitcases came in at this time. These suitcases came at this time. He didn't leave a list, which means that it came from the hotel.
Yeah. Oh no,
somehow,
this
right?
Yeah. So this was seen. This got scrubbed because for anybody that's been to a casino, this is banks on steroids. There's cameras that cover every angle. You cannot get into a casino without being on camera. So for him to have got in, people like, I don't know, we never saw anything, means that you intentionally, it was scrubbed, or just like with Epstein, you just the two guys in charge of watching the cell suddenly took a break at the same exact time and walked away.
Right. And I don't want to say how or why I know this, but these assault rifles are heavy. So even if they're disassembled, that's a lot of weight. That's a lot of Mr. Paddock, like what the hell you got in these? Yeah,
like I said, it's not something you throw in a backpack and you just walk into the thing. I mean, even a can of ammo weighs 20, 30 pounds. I mean, it's not light.
No, 22 suitcases. So he had this correspondence going. What's that, sir?
Charles comment. Tighter than the self-checkout at Walmart. Oh yes.
Yeah, I'd say by a little bit, but we get your point though. We get your point, Charles. We get it. So this Jimmy Nixon, he was a convicted felon. He corresponds with Stephen Paddock prior, and there are 11 letters where he's discouraging him from enacting his plans at different venues. And this is discovered in a vacant office building in Mesquite, Texas, where Paddock owns some property. No indication that it was a property that Paddock owned, though. And it was in a manila envelope with no postage marks. So
it just happens. Yeah. Just happens to show up. There's like the hard drive's missing. That Yeah. It just happens to have this. There's a manila envelope that just happens to have all this information just laid out right here. Yeah, come on.
With no ties, no ties to ownership by Paddock. How about Campus, right? So he's the security guard that gets shot in the leg like a hero. He waits around for 10 minutes to direct the police to the room. Like they don't freaking know because there's a window shot out and the guy's been shooting firearms for for 10 minutes? Like so many clues. Like we can't find the guy. Like, where is he? Oh no, he's up here. He's up here, people.
Well,
So
even housekeeping would have alerted that their door was altered.
yeah.
I mean, all this stuff. It's like, I don't know.
Yeah. The letters do sound like fabrications. They're creating a pattern. Just like Chicago, they said, oh, he rented a hotel overlooking Lollapalooza. Maybe he was going to shoot up Lollapalooza. The hotel goes, hey, I got news for you. We don't want this crap on our hands. We don't want you associated with this. He didn't stay here. So, yeah, this is why it's a sinister mystery, folks.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Campos has all these interviews lined up. He's a hero, right? Everybody wants to talk to a hero, right? They're canceled. He was supposed to talk to Hannity. Remember Hannity talked to the
he just disappeared. He just booked.
Yeah, now could it have been too much risk or liability? There were allegations that he bought a house, learned his brother $10,000. As Joe pointed out to me, Joe Red Miles, maybe it was simply hush money because we'll wait on the MGM Resort thing. I want to end with it, Craig, because it's the most sinister of all. Yeah, it's disgusting.
That's my opinion of why he disappeared. So yeah, continue.
Yeah, me too. Right on, brother. Right on. So okay, so we hinted at the man's mental health. 2013, 2016, June of 2027, he is prescribed benzodiazepine, which is Valium. Now, a side effect is that it doesn't cause aggression, according to the, and let's go back to this 14-year-old kid and find out what he was taking, or the kid who took the shot at Trump, find out what he was taking, right? Because not enough people are talking about this. They're talking about the gun problem. Okay, legit. But these kids all seem to be on these mood or SSRIs and things like that, right? So benzodiazepine, Valium. A side effect is if you're aggressive, it makes you more aggressive. There are no indications that Stephen Paddock was aggressive, right? We know more about aggression on the part of the kids that disappeared after the basketball game in California, right? The 5 that we did the show on, than we know about this guy who shot up almost 1,000.
Who's one of the most deadliest, mass shooters. Yeah,
right. Abuse of benzodiazepine, and how would they possibly know that he was abusing it? They wouldn't know. Abuse prompts psychotic episodes. As Joe rightly pointed out, as you've alluded to, Craig, this was not, I'm grabbing a gun and I'm standing in the middle of X and I'm opening fire. This was not that.
No.
This was not a psychotic break. Because if someone has a psychotic break on this level, I think the bellhops are going to notice.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you get some guy, acting all weird, security is going to be alerted. I mean, it's a casino. They're looking for this stuff. I mean, that's why... And that's where I hinted at the MK Ultra. Like I said, I don't want to get too deep, but that's where it's almost like the stuff that they've developed. A lot of these psychotropics, these drugs that they've got people in here. I almost wonder if some of these things, like where the term is, they got spun, is if through the research they know what this effect is, and then it's something that's can be a simple trigger. It could be a tone. It could be something like in the mind. It just like, you can broadcast it through a radio. It's like, it's a frequency that's not really, these are the type of things that people, claim. It's like, this is why I think these people are just like all of a sudden just like snapping. Yeah. But if that was the case, there's so many people on these drugs that if that was the case, you'd think they would more than just that person would be getting affected. You'd be seeing a pattern. Yeah. So that's why I said I have a hard time with the spun aspect just because of that. It's like, if he's hearing it, there's so many people that are on that same thing that, you would have like, why was Sally down the hall freaking out and smashing furniture? Well, it wasn't happening.
Right. Yeah. So, his mother said that he must have had a brain tumor, but they went ahead and they did a microscopic brain examination at Stanford University of all places. They found out that his brain was totally normal. So they went to great lengths to study this guy. I don't know if they look at the brains of all shooters. Are they looking at that kid's brain? I don't know if anybody has any information. If that's standard operating procedure to look at these people's brains, let me know. So Craig, let's MGM Resorts International. They don't own YouTube or Facebook, do they?
No.
They invoked a federal law that was enacted after 9/11 that says that companies are protected from liability if they use anti-terrorism services to help prevent or respond to mass violence. MGM's position was that they had Festival Security, Contemporary Services Corp, which was protected from liability and certified by the Department of Homeland Security to handle acts of mass injury and destruction. Let's just pause right there before we talk about what else MGM did. Craig, it was Metro police officers that breached the room possibly an hour to an hour and a half after this started. Where is their anti-terrorism services preventing or responding to mass violence?
Not there.
There's very little evidence of that.
No. Yeah, it's some guy named Bob downstairs that got a little patch and he has it on his vest. I'm the anti-terrorism, task force. Yeah, I mean, it's the one thing. Like I know it's kind of like this. Where we're talking about like the MGM, that part of even Blackstone was part owner of this as of 20. I think it was as of going into 2023. So even Blackstone, was afterwards. So like I said, it wasn't, and we've talked about Blackstone before, which they, diversification into a casino, but it definitely speaks of that. This was, we've got to stave off the lawsuits.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause this is what they do. I'm just going through some of these comments and then cause we're getting towards the end, folks, hang with us.
Yeah.
Tanya says, I'd love to see an episode about targeted individuals, people who believe they are targeted with these kinds of mind control weapons. Craig and I have both on our separate shows, Three Beards podcast and on Into the Outer Realms, interviewed Solaris Blue Raven. And she has a lot to say about being targeted by these. I don't believe that everybody who with the tinfoil hats and all that kind of stuff who say that they're being targeted. I mean, there are these technologies that the Air Force had on their website that they took down when people were looking at them. They're called V-Skull or something like that, where you can beam crap into people's minds. I mean, anytime you're doing these neural net things, Craig, if they can put signals or take signals, it can go both ways.
Yeah, DARPA has it. You just have to look at their the stuff that they've got on it. DARPA, it says right there some of the projects, and they talk about that.
Yeah, I think it's called V-Skull. Anyway, King says, rightly so, a bunch of protocols were not used. People that were trained that failed at their job makes me think it was nothing more than a government psyop. And we're trying to give you all the data, folks. Thank you so much, Emma. We're wrapping up, so there won't be that much for you to see. Peace. We appreciate your comments and all that good stuff. So this is what MGM does. They sue hundreds of survivors or families of slain victims to prevent them from suing MGM. And they asked the federal courts to qualify the shooting as an act of terrorism and declare MGM not responsible. So business is business. This is a lot of dead and wounded people on their property.
Yeah. It's like, and I think what's worse is the fact that not only was this not like called out at that time, it's like you can definitely tell this is where, whether people like it or not, there's mob ties, organized crime, still rampant in the casino industry. It's just they've just gone more white collar than the blue collar. I'm going to take you out back, and as I said, that doesn't like the movie Casino. That a lot of that doesn't happen in that fashion anymore.
Not in this techno age, no.
Yeah, it's more like through the legal way. And that's kind of how this thing happened. Is these you can see this because politicians got brought in this thing that you can clearly see they don't care about what's right for the people that were hurt or this stuff is. You can clearly see it's like it's their best interest of who's lining our pockets.
Yeah.
In this multi-billion-dollar industry, unions, everything else like this, they're all tied in these things. That's one of the things. And it's a shame because, like I said, that's why that security guard, I'm pretty sure that's why he was gone, is because they're like, you're going to cause. So here's your option. We can make you disappear or you can disappear.
Yeah. And
It's
here's a little
it's
bit
your
of money
choice. Yeah.
for your wound and for your service and for your heroism. Here's a bunch of money. You know, Craig, because what happens during trials? A lot of things come out.
Yeah.
Did you see the news today? Did you see who in the 11th hour copped a guilty plea to tax fraud?
No.
Hunter Biden.
Really?
You know exactly what that's about.
Yeah, that means we're heading off the path, the stuff that's going to possibly going to come. So if you nobody's going to dig any further because it's now over. You're like,
It
yep,
was
I was
all
guilty.
about his
Sorry.
business. Yeah, it's a financial trial. So his business
Yep.
dealings, his connections, Burisma, all that kind of stuff pops out of the White House, but it's about legacy and it's about his, second now taking the reins and doing well. And an arrogant SOB like Hunter Biden copping a guilty plea, there was pressure.
Yeah, and then Joseph was saying that the prosecutors rejected the deal. I don't know.
That
That's
I
what I
did
said.
not see.
No, I'd have to.
I didn't see that.
That's yeah. So that's the thing. I like you said. That's one of the things for me was like you said was one of the most sinister things is just the fact that a major corporate entity like this thing intentionally made it to I mean you just lost a loved one, and not only that the fact that this company would come and sue you to ensure that you did not that you went away. I mean that's like I said that's I mean I don't I don't even have words for just how dirty that is.
Yeah, I mean, I was stunned. I was looking at that and 3 hours ago, don't know if they'll accept it. 5 hours ago, the Washington Examiner says the DOJ rejects Hunter Biden's plea offer. So we're going to have to look into that more because there doesn't seem to be a straight answer. And not every news. Yeah, it's a developing story.
Yeah.
There you go. But he was looking at like $3 million in fines or something and 17 years in prison. It was pretty hefty. So for the prosecutors to be pushing it, we're going to have to follow this, guys. But it just made me think. So the last thing I want to say, Craig, because we're moving on in time, the estate was settled in April 2023. $1.3 million of Paddock's money will be distributed to the victims' families.
Yeah.
So anyway, there you go. I mean, what I love about some of these sinister mysteries is some of the sinister is very surprising. It comes from unexpected places like MGM. Now, Craig, before we end, you were mentioning Blackstone. Blackstone owns what as of 2020?
They actually owned a stake in the Mandalay Bay.
Not surprised. That's interesting, huh?
So it's one of those. So for people, they're like, oh, this stuff. No, they saw the business opportunity, and so I said once again, this is the reason I brought it up. Was like, it was I hate to use the word because it is like capitalize. They took advantage of the situation where it was kind of like they buy low, sell high. They saw this thing, they jumped in. It's like, it's a diversification. But once again, the fact that you have one of these names, like Blackstone, that's involved in something like this, it's clearly they saw, what we just talked about. The families basically getting nothing, for compensation from these things, and this entity like Blackstone making money off this stuff. Where it's like some of these families, it's like it was their failing. Why aren't they being held accountable?
Right.
It's because they knew people and they got approved.
That's right. So, Craig, we are speaking of Biden and all. We are moving on toward the election.
Yes.
And in 2 weeks, we're going to do Project 2025, Heritage Foundation Project 2025.
Yeah, this will be an interesting one.
Yeah. October 3rd, we're going to do Thiel and the Silicon Valley CIA venture fund surveillance state. That's going to be very interesting. And then October 17th is going to be January 6th.
That'll be an interesting one.
Yeah, a couple weeks before the election. And October 31st and November 14th, we're holding open because Who the hell knows what the country's going to look like if we're on the
Yeah.
air? So let's just leave those open, Craig, and see.
Okay.
Those might just be topical, what's in the news, analysis of the election. We don't do those, but they could kind of be fun. Just get us in enough trouble. So, but luckily the internet went out last night at 7:30, not tonight, obviously. I've been real good about rebooting my system. We are looking into alternatives. If anybody out there uses Brightspeed, my neighbor across the way just switched to Brightspeed. They're offering 2 gig for like $60 a month. They, I guess, are a company that bought CenturyLink. But they're everywhere. They're spending so much money on advertising.
There's also
and all.
Starlink. You could try, Starlink. Like
I haven't
try the
seen
satellite.
anything for that, but
Yeah.
So I might switch over to Brightspeed. I don't think I have 2 gig. I'm not sure what I have, embarrassingly, but we do have a business level. But anyway, Craig, it is always a pleasure. And yeah, we've got some really interesting ones that I think are super important coming up. So I look forward to them.
Yeah, it's a terrible one to have to dedicate to, but like I said, rest in peace, Michael W.'s.
Yeah, I'm gonna look at that because that's really sad. So this show was for Michael.
Yeah,
and yeah.
And once again, Joseph, thank you for your info for this up.
Yeah, because wow, you were a real lifesaver. So what else was I gonna say? Next week, guys, tune in. It's my last solo show for a while. It is the uses of ritual and the dangers of spectacle. This is also very timing when you think of the Democratic and Republican conventions. You think of everything from Hitler and Leni Riefenstahl and the Third Reich to, everything is spectacle now. Halftime shows and everything is loaded with the spectacle of the Olympics is loaded with controversy. And is the controversy all inadvertent? Is it purposeful? Are they sneaking? So I think it's going to be a very useful topical show that will set Craig and I up for our run. And then I'm going to have some novelists. Jessica Knuckles is going to be on the show talking about Rhododendron Society, her book. Another man about a murder based on a true story in 1880s Georgia. I want to talk to some writers and keep it a little light because Craig and I are bringing the heavy. So that's what we're going to do, folks. I appreciate our numbers are up across platforms.
Thank you, everybody, for watching.
Follows, likes, all those things. Subscription is up, so thank you. We're gonna keep and wait until you guys see the new branding for Sinister Mysteries once we got it all done, front and back.
Working on it.
Yeah, 2 different pieces in the front. Got some real talented people involved, right, Craig?
Yeah, no, it's really it was one of the guys involved was from across the pond. Yeah,
and one very close to home and very close to my heart doing the music. So, all right, peace, everyone. Stay safe out there. Let's all continue to follow this Hunter Biden thing because this is big.
That's right. Don't be sinister.
But
stay mysterious.